No, budgeting was tough. Again, been in industry nearly 20 years, but never been on the commercial side of things. And don't make decisions lightly, because it can quite quickly get expensive and probably then overwhelming. Much better just to kind of like prepare for that at the start, and avoid finding the pitfalls ultimately.
Welcome to the Self Builders Podcast, the podcast that covers everything you need to know to get on the way to building your own house. We're brought to you by Mayflower Mortgage and Finance, the self-building finance specialist in the UK.
Hello and welcome back to another episode of the Self Builder Podcast. I'm your host Sam Taylor, and we are brought to you by Mayflower Mortgage and Finance. This is the show where we have discussions with people in the industry who've been and completed self-builds, and we ask questions about it. We find out what their journey's like and try and extract some insight and knowledge to provide value to our listeners. This week, very pleased to be joined by a chap called Matt Jones. Matt, you've firstly, welcome to the show. How are you doing?
Hi Sam, yeah, I'm good, thank you. Yeah, all good. Glad to be here.
I hear you've just been to the lakes. Whereabouts in the Lake District did you go? Tell me a bit about that.
Yeah, we've been up to. It was our first experience of glamping in a little campsite overlooking Ullswater. So it's our first taste in the lakes with the kids. We've got twin boys who are 5 years old. So we thought we'd brave the great UK outdoors. We got lucky with the weather, and had a great time. Done some walking, and the boys survived their first climbs up some fells and see some waterfalls and bits and pieces. So yeah, good weekend. Thank you.
Lovely. Yeah, sounds nice. Now, you've just come to the end of your. Well, why don't I hand over to you and why don't you explain? From what I know, you're at the end of your self-build. You've embarked on this journey. Why don't you tell us a little bit about it? What made you decide to get into building your own home as opposed to just using a traditional route of buying a house from a developer? Tell us a bit around the decision-making process there.
Yeah. Okay. So yeah, we've been moved in now for about 10 months, which to any self-builders out there, they know that they almost never feel like they're quite finished. Me and the wife decide what, we disagree on what we class as finishing touches. So I think finishing touches are, little things like door handles and a garden, for example. But I mean, that they do need finishing at some point. But the self build, it's almost a relief to get to the finish line, and so it's kind of see a bit more of the kids and have a bit of a rest and sort of get back into the flow of things. So we'll pick some of those bits up next year. But so the decision to do the self build in the first instance, really, I guess, I think our parents have kind of always spoken about doing a self build. As a kid, kind of been to look at plots of land with my dad and mum and dad who sort of toyed with the idea of doing self builds, and they had friends and things who sort of ended up self building. Parents never did it and kind of look back and wish they'd done it, because my dad's a practical guy. He's a self-employed joiner, makes bespoke furniture, kitchen, stairs, that kind of stuff. So practical guy could have quite easily turned his skills to building a house, but it just never, the right plot of land just kind of never dropped him, fell on his lap almost. So I've kind of always been aware of self-build and seen some people who have done it and done them successfully. People who have, serial self-builders who have done the first one and sold that, bought another plot of land, built another one and done 2 or 3 or 4 over the years. And, they've lived in nice houses and made a few quid along the way. So I've kind of always been aware of it. I'm also, I work in the construction industry. So I'm a construction professional, worked in the construction industry for just over 18 years now. Started out as a setting out engineer, progressed up to a site manager, done contracts management for a few years, and I've always worked for main contractors. So we've kind of always been around I've always been around building, and thought, I've always kind of thought that I would use those skills and that experience one day to do my own build. The first property I bought as a first time buyer, bought that, did a full refurb on that, did an extension, made a few quid, sold that, bought another property which was a repossession, again got that at a decent price, and did a full refurbishment on that, and yeah, I guess so. Done extensions, done refurbs, and I've been on the property ladder a bit, and got into a position, a financial position where I if I stretched myself, I could do a self build from scratch and use the skills that I've got. So that's kind of a bit about why, I guess. I suppose another reason really is we did the refurb on the second house, and I made the mistake of getting that valued, and they come along and do a valuation, and you think, I've made a few quid here, so I've got to sell it and release that equity, and then it's kind of like on to the next project. I thought, rather than just buying a property and extending and refurbishing, just was made aware really of some plots of land that were coming up in a nearby village, nice village near us. Know that plots of land are quite scarce, so just asked a few more questions about it, and took the leap and put my name on a plot.
Brilliant. And how long ago was this? What was this? A few years ago? 5 years ago? How long ago did you start the process?
So we moved out of our last house the day after the boy's first birthday. So we had a nice first birthday party. Everyone came round and had a celebration, and then woke up the next day and thought, crikey, we've got to pack up the rest of the boxes and move out. So that was that's September 2019. So a long time ago now, over 4 years. But like I say, we've been moved in a year. So we sold that, moved into rented accommodation, rented a house in a nearby village. That released the equity from that property, and acted as a deposit on the self-build loan. That's when I met Mayflower. Mike at Mayflower helped us out on the self-build finance, and did a good job of doing so. And then it's kind of had to sit and wait a bit for the developer to get the plot of land was carved into 9 plots with a new access road in. We bought one plot of those 9, and so it seemed to take forever, waiting for the developer to put in the roads and the services, waiting for highways and planning and all of that kind of stuff. So that took an absolute age, probably 18 months. Really frustrating, because in that time along came COVID, pandemic, construction industry went through a crazy spell, material scarcity, material price hikes, labour price increases. So you just sat off the property market, which also set off on an upward path. So you're not riding that wave. So you're missing out on any gains on the property market. In rented, money stagnant in an account waiting to do this build, and everything getting more and more expensive. So that was probably the most frustrating part, because there was nothing I could do about it, completely out of my control, all over to the developer to get the road in and the infrastructure in. So that was a tough thing. Loads of people saying, why don't you look at another plot of land, and you've been waiting for 18 months already and you've still not started. But we knew it was the right plot, we knew it was in the right spot. That's the plots. Good plots are worth waiting for, I think, and they don't come up very often. So so we had to sit tight for 18 months, and then we got started. And the actual build, from sort of spading the ground to moving in, was about 14 months. So, which for me, working in the construction industry, 14 months is painfully slow. A house of this size, if you've got a team of contractors on it, managed by a large main contractor, you'd build in probably half that. But your expectations when doing it as a self-build just have to be, you've got to manage them, I think, because especially if you're trying to do things yourself. I'm fairly practical, and I can turn my hand to most things. I guess, jack of all, master of none. I can, did a lot of joinery, the groundworks, drainage, the beam and block floor. So as soon as you start doing any of the actual practical work, you can only do it around your job. And when your job takes up 45, 50 hours of your week, there isn't much left. So it's evenings and weekends, and it's just slow. So 14 months, but it's a good sized property, nice family home. So I think that's a point to know. It does not progress anywhere near as fast as if it was managed by you'd gone and bought a custom builder or a turnkey solution for a builder. I didn't even, I broke all of the work into work packages, individual work packages, and manage all the trades independently. So again, coordination of all that was important.
What do you think is the biggest challenge? Obviously, I imagine a fair amount of resilience would be needed to, like you say, you had the pandemic to contend with as well, but just for people embarking on this journey, let's say we take the pandemic out of it, I imagine there's a certain mindset, a certain kind of attitude that you need to think, okay, well, this may not go smoothly. There may be challenges, there may be hurdles. It may take 14 months before a shovel's in the ground. What advice would you give to people around kind of, how they approach this kind of project?
I guess that advice depends on your chosen route. So if, like I say, I was fairly hands-on, so I did lots of things myself, and I almost probably wouldn't do as much. I wouldn't do certain things myself next time. If I could afford to buy in some skills, I would do. So I'm not an architect, but I can use AutoCAD, and I can turn my hand to design and understand design and building regulations. So I did all my own architecture, so I didn't employ an architect. So that quite a few sleepless nights thinking, well, I've not designed a house before, and this is a fairly big house, and there's a few nice bespoke features. Have I got that right? Is that going to work? So I probably wouldn't do that again. I'd buy in the skills of an architect. That's probably a little bit naive on my part, but we did it, and we got there in the end. But I guess I've lost my train of thought a little bit there. Toughest bits and mindset, I think, was the question. I mean, you've got to remain positive, because you're gonna get knocks. Like it is not going to go smooth. If it was easy, everyone would be doing it. Keep telling yourself, it'll be worth it in the end. I think every self-builder must tell themselves that 5 times a day. It is tough, but if you structure the project in the right way, get the right help, ask the right questions, get a good team that you can rely on, then that makes life much easier. What I think lots of self-builders do is, and this is Rich coming from me, is doing too much themselves or trying to do too much themselves. My project was a success because of the connections I've got, been in the industry for almost 20 years. And even though I've got that experience and that expertise, it still wasn't easy. So I can easily see how people who have got less experience, who maybe not even in the construction sector, who think, well, I'm going to do my own project management, I'm going to do my own drawings, or I'm going to, I'm going to do my own, look after my own budget and things like that. It's doable, but it's tough, and it's a risk if you get it wrong. So the toughest bit for me, just because the skills were there and the experience was there, the toughest bit was the time. You've got family, you've got work, you're doing the practical work on site, and you're also doing the project management on an evening in between meetings at work, while you're driving, you're making quick snap decisions. And again, it paid off in my example, but I can see how less experienced people would make those decisions quickly, and it could end up going wrong. We've all seen, we've watched Grand Designs and the likes, and it's easy to see how that can kind of happen if you've underestimated the challenge.
Yeah. Let's talk a little bit about budget. You've mentioned that you had a bit of a pot, you had some sort of capital to go in there with and to get the ball rolling. We obviously had a look at doing some of the work yourself because you were able to fall back on your skills, and you were confident enough and knew about software to design your own property. Was budgeting an issue? Did you find that was a constant nag in the back of the head as you kind of oversaw that, or was budgeting absolutely fine?
No, budgeting was tough. Again, been in industry nearly 20 years, but never been on the commercial side of things. I've never professed to being a professional estimator, a professional quantity surveyor. So again, knew the processes that those professionals had, and the skills that they use, and the software that they use, and the way to set things up. But so it was okay, but it wasn't easy. And dealing with change isn't always easy. So like I said, we mentioned COVID, and material prices just went through the roof. I think like timber just doubled in price in like 6 or 8 months. So the timber trusses on my budget that I'd got a quote for like just before we started. I mean, that's one bit of advice: get as many quotes as you possibly can for as many things as you possibly can, and let those inform your budget. Don't go on Google and Google the average cost of a set of trusses, because, for example, or the average cost of. There's almost no such thing as average when you're dealing with independent work packages. So get tons of quotes. So, but even though we got quotes, the truss, the joist and truss package, I think came in at it's like 9,000 or 10,000 quid before we started, and then once we got going, 6 months later, come to place the order. I knew prices were increasing just because I was getting all the price rise notifications and things like that. So I knew it was happening, but there's nothing I could do about it. And I ended up spending nearly double, like 17 grand. So 7 grand just like disappeared in an instant almost. But I think the skill to managing your budget is not just carry on and just keep overspending, because that's 7 grand on that one item. That's quite a big chunk, but you make lots of little decisions, and what you might not notice straight away is £1,000 here, £2,000 there, £400 there. If they're all going in the wrong direction, if stop and look, you've just now spent an extra 25 grand, and that is a chunk of money. So I kind of, at every milestone, whether you get up to damp, you get up to wall plate, you get to pre-plaster, just look at your budget, update it, compare your estimate versus your actual live cost, and reconcile the difference, and then you can see how far out you are on your budget, and then you can make informed decisions. I think so many people just think, oh, well, there's nothing I can do about COVID, so therefore I've got to spend extra money. So I guess an example I could give, so I've just explained, I've now overspent on my timber joists and truss package by £7,000 or £8,000. What I really wanted was natural slate roof tiles, but it was an area that I thought, well, I could. So the term in the industry is value engineer. I could find a cheaper alternative to natural slate because it's one of the more expensive materials to use on your roof. And just thought, like, I can't. My budget was finite. I didn't have an extra pot. I had a sensible contingency, but I didn't have money just slushing around just to kind of bail me out if I needed it. So I had to make some decisions. I had to value engineer. So I saved, I think on the roof tiles, I've got a a clay lookalike tile that looks like slate, and there's only people in the building industry really know the difference between the real thing and the clay alternative. But and that saved me £13,000 just on one item. And so I think it's just kind of like pick and choose the areas that you're happy to make a sacrifice on. So many self-builders, because it's their dream, they've already invested so much time and energy and effort, they almost feel like, well, I don't want to sacrifice anything. I've got this picture in their head they're working towards. And every single decision on your material choices feels like life and death. But actually, as long as all of the materials work well together, the bricks go well with the window colour and the roof, colour, and your rainwater goods, and the choice of your garage doors and your front doors, as long as all of that materials palette works well together, I think you're okay, and you can save big chunks of money and still get a fantastic. Like no one's driven to my house and gone, love the house, shame about the tiles.
I
think just consider the whole thing.
I imagine, after such a long time, a couple of decades in the building industry, I imagine your social circle's probably based around that. I was going to ask, do you get a lot of stick off your?
Yeah, there is a bit of that. Yeah, yeah, there is a bit of that. Like, tongue in cheek, shame about the tiles. Yes, they've done it. They've done it for that reason, because they've known about the swapping out of the materials. Yeah.
Excellent. One of the other podcasts that we did, someone spoke to us around kind of lifestyle and understanding what your lifestyle was and how your house would almost complement that. Did you have a similar sort of thing, the way you designed it? Did you think, oh, okay, well, the kitchen's the heart of the home, I want that here, or I don't really want the twins' bedroom near ours, so I'm going to look at having it in this wing or there?
Yeah, we definitely. That was top of the list. Keep the twins as far away. No, only joking. But they are at the other end of the house, to be honest. So it's funny that you should say that. But yes, definitely. Like I say, I'm not an architect, so we just sat around a computer and we looked at loads of other designs on the internet, and get your hands on some floor plans, and even look on Rightmove. I think I like that house. Look at the floor plan. What does that look like inside? And trying to visualize it as much as possible. And again, I guess because I'm in the industry, visualizing spaces is not too much of an issue. But like I say, most I would recommend should use an architect who can help with all that kind of stuff. But so yeah, definitely the house was designed around how we plan to use the property. And you mentioned the kitchen, obviously the heart of the home. That's absolutely key. We've got young kids, so it's that we almost design the house around the kitchen. We want the island to be this big. We want it to incorporate a bit of a breakfast space and an area for like casual eating, so that if the kids are there and we're preparing food and whatnot, that's all sort of taken care of. And then kind of just like evolved it around how we wanted the kitchen, utility pantry area. So that was kind of top of the list, just looking at pretty pictures on Instagram and kind of thinking, well, that layout works really well. Let's start with that. And then, right, so if that's where the kitchen is, where would we want the dining space? And does that want to be a more formal space? And, the lounge, we want that to be a bit cozier, like not open plan, log burning stove, just keeping that a bit cozier. So yeah, it all works around that kind of that design, really. Fairly open plan, but with a bit of thought about individual spaces as well. But yeah, you mentioned about the twins. Yeah, they've sorry, I've interrupted there. Yeah, the twins have. So we've got they've got their own bedrooms, and they share a Jack and Jill bathroom. That was a little bit of a design compromise, actually, but it works well for us because we've got two boys, and there's certainly they're only 5 years old, so there's no arguments yet. But I can imagine when they get a bit older, that might become a problem if we're still here, and the teenagers and things. But we'll overcome that when we get there.
You got a good bit of time. Yeah, I've got a 15-year-old and a 12-year-old, and the idea of introducing a Jack and Jill bathroom to them would be bloodshed. It would, so yeah, make me want to something to look forward to.
Yeah.
You've given a lot of advice on this, and I think there's absolutely tons of value. But I'm going to ask you again: what advice would you give? Let's say I was about to embark. Never done this before. What advice would you give me if I was considering my own self build?
So never done anything like it before, not been in the industry. My advice to you would be get some help, spend more time looking at what you can afford to borrow, what your maximum budget is. Work that back from what you want your mortgage payments to be, because if you want to stay there for a period of time, what you don't want to do is end up with this great house with tons of equity and a mortgage that's unsustainable based on your salary and your circumstances. So I factored that kind of stuff in. That's been impacted obviously a bit with the recent interest rate price hike that we've experienced, but at least it was considered. And I would get some professional help on budgets, probably independent budgets too. It'd be very easy just to rely on builders, and builders are great, and we all need them. But I think in terms of comparing apples with apples, if you've got a full bill of quantities, so a full measure of all the materials that you need to deliver that project, that's mega useful. That allows you to send out robust inquiries to builders. It helps them price it. They have to spend less time on an evening with a scale ruler trying to work out what materials they need to make allowances for and what labour allowances. So you get a better return on your inquiry. You've also then got a full list of all the materials for if you're buying all your own materials, like what I did. You spend so much time taking off, how many bricks do I need, blocks, insulation, everything, floor tiles, the whole thing. You need to measure all of that. So if you get it done once and spend a few £1,000 at the start, it just informs that project all the way through. It also converts into a live cost document. So I talked about like reconciling your budget as you go, and updating it just so that costs don't spiral out of control. That one document is at the heart of like good project management, along with things like a construction program. So a fairly simple Gantt chart just helps you visually map out different trades and the relationship between different trades, helps you communicate effectively with the different trades, give people solid start and end dates for their works and things like that. So I think in a one-liner, treat your self-build properly like a main contractor would treat a contract, and it's properly resourced. It's got experienced people doing the management, and don't make decisions lightly, because it can quite quickly get expensive and probably then overwhelming. It's like tough. It's tough even if it's going well. I can imagine if it doesn't go well, how it could quite easily like get a bit much, and then you're going to need professional support to dig you out of a hole. It's much better just to kind of like prepare for that at the start, and avoid finding the pitfalls ultimately. So like I say, I've been in the industry for quite some time, and whilst our self build, especially given at the time we built through COVID and things, we came in on budget, more or less on time. So it's deemed a success, but it wasn't. It still wasn't easy, either with our experience. So while I was in the early stages of the build, I sort of head scratching a bit, thinking, well, I've been in this industry for like forever. supposed to know what I'm doing. I'm still scratching my head over the budget, and I'm trying to reconcile the design versus the budget, but like trying to maximize that budget, but at the same time building a bit of a contingency. Like, because I was in control of all of it, including the drawings, like how big can I make it? What nice features can I afford? Going out to the supply chain to get prices on things like glazing, just to sort of de-risk, glazing package coming in at way over budget and things. So I'm there searching for all the answers, and I'm thinking, crikey, if I'm struggling with like my network and my circle of friends and my experience, then others must be, really struggling or spending thousands and thousands of pounds on professional like project management, and there didn't seem to be much in the middle of the two. It's kind of like go it alone and make tons of mistakes, or spend 70 grand on a project manager. And it was like one or the other. So I've actually since then founded a self-build, an online self-build platform called Build Manager. So it's www.build-manager.co.uk, and we exist to empower self-builders. We have an online step-by-step guide that tells, gives people the professional way to manage a self-build project, all the guidance, templates, the right sequence of doing things. We've got exclusive discounts with various different merchants, Wicks and Howdens, Travis Perkins, Brewers Paint. So you can, by all means, feel free to go check it out. You can sign up for free. There's some support packages on the back of that where you can tap into one of our self-build coaches who can offer you that sort of halfway house project management function remotely, and for a fraction of the cost of a full project manager who needs to be on site 3 or 4 days a week. You can get some solid support just to help you along the way, even if if your target is to project manage it yourself and you've never done one before. I guess we could be quite a good alternative to like making a ton of mistakes, and help you keep on track, really.
Like you said, it's not like these aren't little tiny things. This is almost like the biggest thing that you may do in your life in terms of creation of something. So having that guidance, that support, that insight, I imagine invaluable.
Yeah, exactly. Like I say, the advice is don't underestimate the challenge. Not wanting to scare people off. It's completely doable. There's, but if you're not in the industry, don't be so naive to think that you can kind of go it alone and it'll be all right. It might be, but it might not. And if you invest in hundreds and hundreds of thousands of pounds for a really small percentage of that overall figure, you can protect that investment and give you a much better chance of success.
Yeah, love that. Matt, thank you so much for your time this evening. It's been a pleasure talking to you and hearing a bit more about your story and some of those challenges. Loads of value out there. I'm sure that our listeners will listen back to this a couple of times. And thanks again for your time. Brilliant. Take care.
Cheers, Sam. Yeah, thank you. Thanks for having us. Cheers. Bye-bye.
Cheers.